The much-awaited BRICS summit has kicked off in Johannesburg. Leaders of member states, including Brazil, India and China, are in the South African city for the summit. Russia's Vladimir Putin is participating virtually. Speaking at the BRICS Business Forum meeting, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi hailed the grouping as a ray of hope during economic slowdown. He also floated the idea of BRICS countries joining India's Unified Payments Interface, or the UPI framework. The summit kicked off with the opening remarks from South African President Cyril Ramaphosa. Ramaphosa says BRICS stands to strengthen economic ties and for inclusive economic development.
The BRICS Business Council is a vital and vibrant platform for strengthening economic ties between our respective countries and in forging common perspectives on inclusive economic growth and development. The changes that have taken place in BRICS economies over the past decade have done much to transform the shape of the global economy.
Remarks from Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva came next in line. At the outset of his speech, he made it clear that accepting the new global colonialism is out of question. He also expressed his support for common trading currency for BRICS economies. He nonetheless underlined that such a currency should not replace national currencies. Let's talk more about this summit, and we are now being joined by our correspondent Kalden Ongmu from Johannesburg. Kalden is in Johannesburg following the latest updates on this forum. Kalden, good to see you. The forum has just begun. We have seen global leaders present issue their remarks, but one person was absent at the podium, and that is Chinese President Xi Jinping. A representative was there on his behalf. Do we have any other information from the teams there on what might have happened to Xi Jinping?
Ladies and gentlemen, friends.
Well, Eric, we have absolutely no answer, where President Xi Jinping is. If you look at the BRICS program, his name is there. He was supposed to have, delivered this address, but instead his commerce minister is representing him. It was a shock for all. It was only when the announcement was made, when they were welcoming all the leaders, that they said that in place of President Xi Jinping, his commerce minister will be representing him. So as soon as the leaders are done with the address, I think it will be time for us to run around looking for where the Chinese president might be. Of course, it's surprising because in the morning he did attend the state visit that was hosted by South African President Cyril Ramaphosa. So after that, we do not have any clue where he is right now.
All right, Kalden Ongmu, stay with me. I'll come back to you in a short while from now. Professor XN Iraki is an associate professor at the University of Nairobi's Faculty of Business and Management Sciences. Is now joining us live from Nairobi, Kenya. Professor, good to see you, and thank you very much for joining us on WION World is One. There is a lot of talk about expanding the BRICS and also the G20 and all these major organizations. Kenya has not shown any interest so far in joining the organizations mentioned, but has been invited to the BRICS forum. Why is the Kenyan government not interested? And is it really significant for African countries or the African Union to join these organizations, Professor?
That's an interesting question, because as a Kenyan, I would want Kenya to join BRICS because it will be a complete word, BRICS. But for now, I don't think Kenya has joined BRICS for quite a number of reasons. One of the reasons I suspect is that Kenya is very much into the ambit of the Western countries, the US, the European Union, the UK. Those are the major Kenya's trading partners. So it will be very hard for Kenya to get out of that orbit and get into BRICS. Number two is that the new government of Dr. William Ruto seems to be very focused on multilateralism, having trade deals with very many countries instead of blocs. So I think those are some of the reasons why Kenya has not joined BRIC or BRICS, but that does not mean it cannot join later. It's possible that Kenya might develop interest in future.
Professor, we'll talk about the expansion of BRICS and also the G20 group of nations in a short while. Let me go back to my correspondent, Calden Ongmu. When this forum began, did the leaders mention or at least say something to do with the expansion of the BRICS?
Actually, Eric, it was only South African President Cyril Ramaphosa who touched on the expansion bit. But the only thing he said was that later on in the retreat, when the leaders will be meeting, that topic, BRICS expansion, is on top of the agenda. So they haven't really gone into the details, but definitely he said he has invited some of the African leaders here at BRICS Summit, and they are here to listen to what they have to say, the admission criteria process that will be discussed, which, all the leaders, they were not, if you go back to hear what they have to say, each leaders of BRICS, not everybody was at one go of whether or not they would allow or they are happy for BRICS expansion, but
excuse you for that. That is our correspondent, Calden Ongmu, who is live in Johannesburg. She's also following up on what is happening at the BRICS summit. Calden Ongmu, I will leave you now to go and ask that crucial question: where is Xi Jinping at the forum, as we await for the retreat tomorrow? Thank you, Calden. Professor, coming back to you, Africa has always been overlooked when it comes to the global arena. What will it take for the continent to play a role in the neo-geopolitics, apart from joining such forums and even organizations?
That's a very simple question. One way to make Africa play a bigger role in the geopolitics is to regain her confidence. 6 years ago, when African countries were gaining their independence, there was a lot of movement towards Pan-Africanism. Nkrumah, Mwalimu Nyerere, Jomo Kenyatta, and the rest. They talked about Africa talking as a voice. But that dream has not been realized. Now they are talking about African Free Trade Area. African Union has not punched above its weight. So the only way Africa can play a role in the global scheme of things is by talking as one voice, coming together. European Union has done that. Asian countries have done that. So unless we are able to talk as one voice, it will be very hard for us to play a role in the global scheme of things. And I hope that the revival of that Pan-Africanism can play a role in that. Not so much from the political angle, but from an economic point of view.
Finally, Professor, and this is a quick one, do you think Africa Union should be enjoined in the G20 group of nations?
That's an interesting question, because the African Union doesn't have the political crowd, the economic crowd that G20 has. But I think if African Union joins G20, it would learn a lot from these highly industrialized countries. So I think African Union can join, but it can learn how those countries manage the economy, how they got industrialized. And Africa can use those G20 countries as a benchmark in our quest for economic growth, in our quest for industrialization. So I think it will be a move in the right direction.
I've been talking to Professor XN Iraki, who is an associate professor at the University of Nairobi's Faculty of Business and Management Sciences. Professor Iraki, thank you very much for talking to WION World is One today.
Thank you, and have a good evening.
Same to you.